Recording. All right, here we go. Hillis Pugh, welcome to the Christ Quest. This could be fun.
Hello, Amos. Thank you so much for having me today. Yeah, this is going to be a fun topic, talking about all things universe, spirituality, all that good stuff.
I interviewed you. So I just interviewed Jason Sheffield and in the Christ Quest, and now interviewing you. Well, these are more conversations, but I interviewed you last week along with Jason Sheffield. And both you guys, I was like, oh man, we have to have a conversation about wherever it is, Hillis, you want to go today. So the goal again of this group is to have conversations that you can't have in mainstream religion, whether
Hmm.
that's Christianity or something else, and to discuss anything that relates, which you could say all of life relates to everything. So for
Yeah,
those that don't know you, do you want to just give a 1 minute introduction? Then we're going to jump.
sure. I am Hillis Pugh, soul mentor, energy facilitator, utilizing Sirian and Lemurian light energies to be of service to others to help clear and any all trauma, PTSD, anxiety, any low vibrating energies and frequencies to assist you to feel better, to be better, to live better. Yeah.
And when you told me that in the interview in ENTV today, we talked about your mom and your grandma and your aunts,
Yes.
and you mentioned, can you go into and what's the spelling? Syrian and Lemurian. How do you spell those?
So Sirian is like the planet Sirius, which is SIS. Oh my God, SIUIS. And then Lemuria is LEMURIAN. So, just like the constellation and then the island, that same. And so, yeah.
So you got into this work. Now I know, but people in this group don't yet know what is a bit of the context, the short version before we jump into energy, spirituality, all that stuff, Christ consciousness. Can you give them a bit of your story briefly, just so they have context of how you came even to be doing this work?
So first and foremost, I am no theologist. I have not formally studied the Bible or Christ himself, Yeshua, Jesus, for some others. But I started this journey with the understanding of gratitude and really took that as my root and my foundation and being more of an observer in that space and expressing gratitude for even the smallest things. And as I progressed on my path and journey opened me up to really understanding the energies and the law of vibration and really understanding the third universal law of the universe that everything vibrates, everything moves, even though it appears that it's not. And then moved into me honing and taking care of my psychic abilities, becoming a psychic medium, also an intuitive consultant. And then lastly, where I'm at now, and this has opened up so much for me with what I do, and that is the Syrian Lemurian light energy work that I do now presently. There's all these tools in my basket that I have access to. And it's just always, just like a good handyman, just got to know which tool to use and when to use it.
So how do you integrate with or experience the Christ consciousness or Christ or whatever that means to you? What is presently? Where are you at with that?
Well, presently, my mind has just been open and blown wide open because I'm presently reading the works of James Kirkwood. And he's a very not well known author. His works were published in the early 1900s, and he was a self funded excavationist, a self funded billionaire, if you will, because of a patent case that he won. And so I'm reading his books about the first civilization of Mu. And the civilization existed 70,000 years ago. And this civilization, can rival some theories about that current archaeologists have about the Garden of Eden, about Adam and Eve, and where we all came from. And if you guys want to check out my YouTube, I have a couple episodes up regarding that with a friend, and we're going to start planning the next episode to dive deep into that. And the reason why I say it blows my mind open is simply because, you fast forward from that 70,000 years into maybe, I don't know, around the time Egypt was at its height, which could have been, 10,000 years ago, give or take. I'm not sure exactly in the timing of this, but they talk about in Christ's most known stories and how he, from a child, he vanished, he disappeared. Okay. And he disappeared from Egypt, from that space, and trekked through India, through to the Tibetan monasteries, to the mystery schools, if you will. This is why a lot of healers, have mystery schools, because this is where they believe Jesus went for 12 years. And upon his return, he then performed what we call miracles. But, through some of my reading and some of my understanding of research, it's not necessarily miracles. That's, to put it simply, for us to really comprehend what was done, and then put that spin of, disbelief on it. Because, and I say disbelief because, well, this one man couldn't have done all of this. This one man couldn't have done this. And so puts us in the mindset of disbelief and in awe, because we want to achieve it, but we have this belief that we can't. That's what I mean when I say disbelief. And so the miracles that he performed were from his studies as being a healer, a trans medium, psychic, all these things that he learned in the 12 years from the inspired sacred writings of Mu, first civilization. And this information traveled from the first civilization to India, to Egypt, to the Tibetan monasteries, to these sacred sites and places over the course of this period after the destruction of Mu. And the works were written on stone tablets, some of them on parchment. Reason for stone tablets is because they knew that the works could be destroyed. And so it's just in this essence that if we step away from the life distractions, find what it is that we are being called to do. Christ wasn't kidding when he said we can, be what he is, and do what he can do. And one of the most, and they talk about it in the latest book that I just finished, is the miracle of how he walked on water. And how people walk on coal and don't burn themselves. And it's simply a matter of really understanding the energetic fields of the earth, understanding the energetic fields of your body, and creating a barrier to support you. Right now I'm studying telekinesis, and in about 3 to 4 years, I'll be on the process of learning how to levitate. And so this takes understanding of the understandings of the energy that's around you.
Wow. Going some places. And we've talked about Billy Carson
Yeah.
and things he's talked about, because the civilizations they're well aware existed. In the Bible narrative, we were taught this earth is 6,000-ish years old, at least this time around. And you start realizing there's civilizations that go way tens of thousands of years that have the same stories that are in the Bible are in these civilizations way back. So,
Well, the reason why they have these same stories is from the original source. The original source being the continent of Mu, which was, in my thought, the ideology of where hell came from. Because in the time of Mu's destruction, you have these gas belts that are running underneath. And typically gas belts run, 5, 8, 10, 15 miles deep beneath the surface. But these gas belts were relatively close, so up to 2 miles beneath the surface. So you have these gas belts running across this newly formed land that creates earthquakes and volcanoes and all forms of eruptions. But at the time of the cataclysm, when it was at its height, you know, in the beginning, Mu was one complete continent. Then it separated into three. And then from there on out, because of the great eruption, that brought the flooding and the great dryas period, all this, everything that we know after that, this was the start of it. And so because of this, the emperors were aware, the people were aware, so they began to establish colonies all over the planet. They established colonies in what we know now as Peru, established colonies in Bolivia, established colonies more so in the Yucatan, which is a very heightened place. They established colonies on the west coast of the North America. And how they typically traveled is because from Mu was in the Atlantic, and it stretched from the end of Hawaiian Islands almost to where Japan is, east and west, and it went as far as south as the southern Polynesian Islands. So that's how far south. So it's a pretty big area, carried 10 million people. And so they were great navigators. And so they usually traveled from west, going to Japan, to east, all the way back around. And it would take them one moon cycle, just to give you a time span, from their home to Japan. And if you think about it, the Japan, which is also known as the land of the rising sun, the sun rises in the east. What was east of that? Mu. Until this day, if you look at the flag of Japan, it still represents the sun with, I believe now it's like either 7 or 8 rays. And if you watch my episodes on YouTube, that get into a lot more detail. But I'm going into this because they traveled, from Japan and then into India, into Burma. But then they also traveled uh, from Mu to South America, through the Channel, up to the Yucatan. And this was before the landmass that connected North America and Europe. This was before this was gone. I'm sorry, South America and Europe. This was before that was gone. So they traveled by boat, but there was a landmass that connected the two. And so then they traveled that path up to what is known as Upper Egypt, which is known for more royalty. And then from Upper Egypt to India. And then from India, which is also Burma, then higher up into the Himalayas, before they were the Himalayas, because after the eruption in the gas belts, the mountain chains formed, maybe about after the time of the cataclysm. But this just gives you a sense of where the information traveled. And that's how Jesus Christ, Yeshua, was able to obtain this information, because it traveled from the homeland, the motherland, all the way across to the other side of the halfway across the planet.
Okay, so why would you go and learn all this? The burning to know this, where did this come from?
Well, I can only speak to what I feel for myself. I mean, you're on this planet, you have a purpose. Your purpose is to serve and to learn and to evolve. And what better way to do that is to simply tap the untappable that's in the body. I mean, we are this near perfect biological machine that can do just about anything. I mean, just about anything when you treat it well. I mean, we have tons of distractions around us, movies, entertainment, whatever, distraction. Then we have the foods such as the sugary sweets or the salty snacks and things like that, distracting for the body. The body can't process what it needs to process. And then you have other forms of distraction. But back then, there was no distraction. Back then and during that time, Egypt at this time and before, all the way back to the motherland, there was no distractions. Everyone went to school, everyone went to college, everyone studied the same thing, everyone shared what they needed to share. And by all intents and purposes, they were far more advanced and knowledgeable than we ever were today. And so why would someone want to do this? Because me being a healer, me doing the work that I do, brings me joy, it brings me happiness, it brings me all these feelings of elation. It brings me back to love. And that's the consciousness of the universe. That's source energy at its height is love. So when you do things in the acts of love, then there's no other reason to do anything except, to feel that.
Wow. So we should probably go into a little bit more of your story. I think people would love to hear about your mom and grandma and your auntie.
Yeah. So, they were my anchors of my life. They were everything to me. I mean, they took me to Catholic school. They took me to Baptist church. I mean, you talk about a kid who's grown up with conflicting views. I mean, you go to one Sunday where you're like saying hymns and praying all for about an hour, hour and a half, up and down on your knees. And then the next Sunday you go into church like dancing and praising and like it's a little party. So I mean, granted it's all the same thing, but I mean, I love them dearly and what they have guided me for and to, and especially my grandma being the iron fist that she was, and my mom who guided me to having the ability to have whatever choice that I wanted. That she didn't take charge of my life; she was guiding me in every step of the way. And my aunt, who was super nurturing and loving. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better trio of people to raise, a child.
And you've integrated with you've felt them since.
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, the everything from the premonition that I had about my grandma passing, which was my very first and prominent premonition, to me, having tears about my mom's passing, surrendering in that space, knowing that there's nothing that I could do in this human body. There was nothing more that she could do in the state that she was in. I mean, you talking about an emotional space. I mean, the summer of 2015. Wow, I mean that was like a very painful summer for me because my aunt passed away. That was expected because she wasn't in the best of health in the last years of her life. But my mom was a surprise because my mom was really getting to understand the work that I do, really beginning to understand who I was as a person. And her decision to join me in partaking in a plants medicine ceremony, taking ayahuasca and really sitting with me in that space. That was everything, but she didn't make it because, of an unfortunate accident. But she was there with me in spirit. And so with that, I know and feel them just about every day of my life. They're my biggest cheerleaders, if you will.
Can we what can we go to plant medicines then? Because you've done, ayahuasca. And
Yes, I've done ayahuasca.
what is how has that impacted your life?
You know, I know that Jesus has done mushrooms, so it's guided him to help him do what he was able to do for others. And so this impacted my life a great deal. I mean, opened me up to really seeing the potential of myself, the potential of humanity. It really helped me to see myself in a different way and forgive myself in a lot of different other ways and accept myself. So it traverses emotional space, with ayahuasca, but I can say with mushrooms. Now they are amazing teachers because they was the first teacher on the planet and how they helped me open up to really begin to hone my abilities and understand the world and energy around me. And so they're the same but different.
Someone told me recently there's a documentary on Netflix that talks about how all the mushrooms, all the plants, but the mushrooms beneath the earth are all connected. And
Fantastic fungi.
I was like, what? And they're talking to each other and sending and communicating. And
Yeah.
can you go into some of that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I remember, a couple of years ago, very clear memory actually, of a couple of instances. when I was with a shaman and a group of us. We were in upstate New York, and we did a caminata, which is like a forest walk. And me, myself, with mushrooms, started walking through the forest. And when you're walking on the forest, and I wasn't barefoot, I should have been, but it was between grass and cement. So it was like these transitional spaces. And walking through the forest and hear the trees, feel the roots, and really feel the love that they have, and then just their presence. But there was this one tree in particular that was dying. That was actually, yeah, it was dying, almost dead. And I had to stop. I had to stop and give it a hug, because it just was that moment of validation. Saying that, thank you for your life, thank you for what you have contributed, and thank you for what you've contributed to the plan. And in that moment, it was just all that nourishing energy, and it was reciprocated because of that space. Really understanding uh, the work that the the underneath the mycelium does, in the connection to all that there is.
So where do you see we're going? Where do you feel we're going with as a planet, as things are changing, emerging? We got plant medicines coming to the forefront. You got peer-reviewed studies now showing the efficacy and the benefit for all types of PSD, from war vets to people that have been, really traumatized. Like, where do you see this is going?
Honestly, if people wouldn't charge for it, it would be much of a greater benefit, because there's so many people. Because you have to realize that from the inception of when Egypt began to hoard information, at the time of the Osirian, and no one knows this, but the Osirian, maybe Billy Carson, I don't know, but at the time of the Osirian religion, which is the taken from the inspired writings of Mu, okay? And then this is when they began to hoard information. And still to this day, they follow the same doctrine of religion from hoarding information, because back in Mu, the priest, high priest, the commoners, everyone had access to the same information, all information. And it wasn't just reserved for the higher ups, or people with special roles or titles. And that doctrine is still being initiated today. Where people, oh, well, because you're not this, you don't have access or have rights to this. You know, where I think this is going is, if we allow for the people to gain access to these medicines, these great teachers, because that's what they are. In the beginning, they assist us in letting go of what no longer serves us. Everything that we held on to, everything we thought we needed, such as negative energy or old memories, the sadness, the griefs, the pain, the trauma, etc. All the lessons. If we just see it for the lesson, as opposed to having that emotional attachment to it, we then can allow ourselves to evolve even faster. And with the medicines, they help us to do that. With the teachers, they guide us in nurturing ourselves and letting go of all the things, such as the grief, pain, etc., and really begin to harness ourself, our soul, our being, and be free from the distractions, be free from the toxins, be free from all the environmental harm that we've done to ourselves and the world around us. And so, honestly think that if you can find these medicines and know what to do with them, take them, because I've been doing plant medicine for about 10 years. I go on mushroom journeys by myself. I mean, there are many things that I do and learn because I had help in the beginning, and now I know how to do these things for myself and able to do them for others. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be very beneficial. It's going to help us grow and come back to where we were, 70,000 years ago and surpass that.
Surpass that. For those that have not studied a lot of the ancient cultures, like the work you're talking about, Billy Carson goes into, it seems so fantastic, and yet we have these pyramids that we still don't have the technology today to build. And
No,
we were told that they were carrying these things on sticks on their shoulders, and we can't even do the same. We don't even have the lift equipment to be able to.
no.
Yeah,
Hmm. No, no, honestly, there's many theories. I've interviewed when I had one of my older shows, I even interviewed somebody where they had a theory where they had waterways to carry the 2-ton block stones up the ramp. But in order to do that, you have to build a scaffolding that would be enormous. I mean, there's all these theories, but the one of the theories that sound truest to me is using sound frequency. Because I mean, when and with and when you understand sound frequency, and when you begin to read some of the stuff that was written in the text, I haven't yet. I want to find the text of the sacred writings of Mu. I really want to find it. So if anyone's watching and know where it is, message me. But when you understand the frequencies and the energy and the polar opposites, you then begin to understand the physics. And sound is physics. Sound is science. And when you understand that, then you can move just about anything.
Dr. Stephen Greer. Do you know who that is? Dr. Stephen
No, I
Greer.
don't.
Okay, so he goes into this, and the energy, the frequency of the UFOs, UAPs, whether the government ones or the ones that are from
Yeah.
other people or other races. That's how they're saying they're doing that. It's all energy and frequency, which Tesla was onto too. There's been these people that have been onto these things for a while, like frequency, everything. Think of everything as frequency, sound, frequency, and energy, or something like that. Tesla said.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is because the energy work that I do is all energy. It's all particular frequency emanated by thought or by with intention. I mean, and think about what I said at the beginning when I talked about, Jesus is or Yeshua's most famous miracle when he walked on water. He wasn't really walking on water. He created a barrier to help support him and the energy of water because you understand the energy, you understand the vibration, you understand the mechanisms that hold everything in place. Because with some of the things that I've read and even watched about the UFOs, they have what is called anti-gravity uh, um, engines. But that couldn't, in my opinion, it might be a little far-fetched. And when you have these things, you have to give some explanation to it that makes sense in your mind. Because if it doesn't make sense to you, then how can you understand it? So you have to have a propulsion system that doesn't, repulse or detract from anything else. You have to have it harmonized with the energy fields around you. And that's basically what Jesus did when he walked on water. That's what he did when he made a blind man see. So in essence, it's doing the same thing, but with the machine, you're harmonizing with the energetic field around you, not doing the opposite.
So it's like someone said it, you're decoupling or you're unhooking from something
Yeah.
and then transcend. It's fascinating stuff.
I remember those exact words. I can't remember from what I watched too, but yeah, it's like that. But when you decouple, you're either one using that energetic force to propel you, and then to harmonize the energetic field around you. So I mean, there's so much potential. I mean, so much untapped potential that we have, but we only use, the most simple of things. You know?
So where where do you think we're heading next 10 years?
if we continue on the same trajectory that we are on, with allowing more medicines, more humanity, more unification, more peace, then I feel that we would be definitely in a better place technology wise, a place that the technology that surrounds us will harmonize with us as opposed to harm or hurt us, as opposed to uh, allowing ourselves to have access to the medicines, to these grand teachers, to assist us in having us have these visions to create a better harmonizing world, a better humanity. If we don't allow for this intervention, then yeah, we can probably start looking for another planet to live on. I mean, honestly, you think
Huh.
about how much, they say that we're destroying the world, which is true. I mean, we're burning down our own forests, we're burning down trees, we're burning down the sustainability for capitalism. Come on. I mean, when you're burning down your own homeland, you don't go next door and burn down somebody's house, let alone you don't go burn down your house and to make room for what? To make a bigger house? To feed all these people. Yeah, we're 8 billion people on the planet. But at the time when Mu was around 70,000 years ago, 10 million people inhabited one space easily because they shared everything. There was proper nourishment, there was proper food, there was proper this. Come on, we overdo it, right? We pretty much, you know, capitalize and consume just about everything, that we see. And it's intentional. So when you allow yourself to sit in the space to have discipline and to understand what discipline means for you, and then begin to follow that discipline with honor and respect, then the harmony will fall into place, the energy of love, which is why we are all here, is to feel that unconditional love. And everyone is searching for that. When you start with it here and begin to project it outwards, things begin to fall into place.
Beautiful. Well, I appreciate you being on the Christ Quest, Hillis Pugh. Any closing remarks before we bounce?
Remember your purpose, and that purpose is.
There you go. Well, thank you very much, Hillis Pugh, for being on the Christ Quest, having a conversation with me. This has been a lot of fun. If you're
Yes.
watching the Christ Quest, reach out to Hillis. He'd love to connect with you. And thanks, Hillis. We'll keep chatting. We'll go off air now, though.
Yes. Thank you, Angles.